Right. Thank you, Chris, and good evening, everyone from Vanuatu. Um, First of all, I'd like to thank the organisers and the women in aid and development community across Australia and abroad for organising this event. While I'm speaking to you this evening from the comfort and safety of my home, from my children's bedroom where the internet works the best, I would like to note, first of all, that Vanuatu is now under lockdown. And whilst this is something most people here tonight are used to, Vanuatu is among one of the last countries in the world after it closed its borders in March 2020 to get COVID. And so I ask that if you'd forgive me if I don't sound too well tonight, as the community transmission is quite widespread and are not able to be properly traced, and it's likely that we've all been exposed to some degree. But I guess these are just some of the realities of living in a developing country where we have limited resources that are overworked and overutilized administering and providing preventative direction and care, as well as dealing with widespread community outbreak, along with an equally overworked and under-resourced response system. So please bear with me. But I'd rather not dwell on what's going on around me. I am honoured to have been invited to speak to you all tonight about my experience working with government to advance development goals here in Vanuatu. But specifically, I want to talk about what it takes to influence policy in the context of national development and development assistance. In particular, I wanted to show how locally led development leads to real sustainable policy reform, and use my experiences from my work in the space of women in leadership. To begin, whether we're talking about internal development processes or development assistance and foreign aid, there's nothing more valuable, relevant, or important than the insights, experiences, advice, and direction from local actors. Unfortunately, in the context of development assistance or the development industry, the term local is one that I often find can come with negative connotations. More so recently, as I've spent more time thinking about it, talking about it, and writing about locally led development, which has been particularly intensified, both the conversation and the practice, because of COVID. So local, the term local, continues to enforce that there is a non-local, which in turn connotes a better or worse. In fact, a colleague of mine, a dear friend, a mentor who's here tonight, wrote a blog about it called Useful Outsiders, which some of you may have heard of or even read. So I have my issues with terminology, obviously, but I won't dwell on that tonight. Instead, however, on the subject of terminology and discussion about locally led development, I'd like to direct your attention to a link to a paper that was presented to the Australian Centre for International Development last year by myself and some colleagues of mine, called Decolonisation and Locally Led Development, which you can find in the chat, which I will put up, but I'll put up after this. This can give you some of the background into the work and the thinking that's influenced some of this, the discussion, the dialogue. Something for you to read if you're interested. Mm-hmm. So when I was thinking about what to speak about, I thought it would be best to share my lived experiences, because there really isn't a better way to talk about influencing change. And I think for all of us in our jobs or in the institutions that we work for, we do that to some degree every day. But I want to share from my personal recent experience into one avenue of a pathway into politics, because this is one key pathway to influencing development and policy outcomes, but it's also because I want to demonstrate what I know and what I understand about what it takes for a woman in a Melanesian Pacific Island nation to take the step into a career in politics, and in Vanuatu specifically. So, as you would have heard from Chris before, I used to work for AusAid and then DFAT. I used to work for government before that. But now I work for a multi-Pacific Island country initiative called Balance of Power. It is funded through the Australia's Development Assistance Program, but it is locally led. The aim of the initiative, among other things, is to have a fair representation in our democratic institutions, focused at this point on Fiji, Tonga, and Vanuatu, with the ultimate aim of increasing women's inclusion in the highest decision-making body of the land, guiding the governance of the country for the optimal benefit of all. Excuse me. Currently, there are no women in Vanuatu's 52-member parliament, only 3 in the Tongan parliament, 2 of whom are elected and 1 is appointed out of 13 members of parliament, and 10 out of 51 MPs in Fiji. In my work, there are many times the lines are blurred between what is work and what is my personal journey into politics. But it is virtually impossible to separate the two if we are working in and through an aid program and yet live the reality of the implications of that development assistance every day. I had an experience that led me to the realization of what is needed if we women are to even start to have a chance to get elected and demonstrate our capabilities. This was an experience into the intricacies and artful political games played through progressing through a political party's hurdles to eventually even be considered as a nominee. And I realized very quickly that for a woman, and we all know this, the cards are stacked against us. And from the get-go, we're already starting from the 300-meter mark in a 400-meter relay, where our opponents have already passed the first baton, say from colonial to independent countries, from the first runner to the second runner. And when I think about the Balance of Power initiative 2.5 years into it, and the beauty of hindsight, there could not have been a better way to have constructed the administration, intent, and direction of this program than by having Pacific Islander women lead it. As much as this might sound like a cliche, for us, it's not just about the work that we're doing. It's something we are passionate about, that we believe in, that actually affects our lives. It's something we would have been doing even if we weren't getting paid for it. Having a better balance in the voices, making the decisions on all aspects of governing a country is paramount. It's of paramount importance, but the very real impact on us as the people who are of these islands is what underpins why and how we interact and implement the work. Our lived experiences are what guide our understanding of the context and inform the decisions we make to pursue and test new interventions to achieve the goal and the objective of this important development barrier, which is the lack of women's representation. In Vanuatu, we want to really understand the barriers to women being recognized as legitimate leaders. This is the same intended outcome for the initiative that I work for in all of the countries that we work in, but focusing on Vanuatu in particular, because we believe that once we get over our preconceived, trained, taught, and practiced norms and beliefs, we can begin to understand what the real barriers are to why more women are not elected into parliament. A combination of the work that we do and my experience has taught me that for Vanuatu anyway, it isn't even social norms anymore that are the barrier. It's the rules of the game that have been set by men which have or intentionally sidelined the women. That's the real challenge. You might say, well, those are norms. But I'm talking about the rules of the games of politics. Men know that women can do it. Women know that women can do it. They do. But men have just been designing, playing, and perfecting the art of male-dominated politics for so long, they've made this way the only way to get in. This artful wheeling and dealing, the boys' club rules, and the domineering attitude of the Melanesian status men enjoy that allows them to operate in a way women are hindered from doing because the rules designed and perfected by men. This continuous demanding and time-consuming, money-exchanging numbers game that underpins the political party system. I was able to experience this firsthand, and it led me to a realization, which I'll share with you. So, as I'm sure some of you here tonight know, political parties is only one of the pathways to pursue a career and enter into politics to get elected. There are alternative ways. But those alternatives, I feel, aren't strong enough yet to stand up to the largely overbearing way of doing things. In Vanuatu, the constitution states that, and I'm paraphrasing here, the legislature may be made up of fair, equal representation, must be made up or shall be made up of fair, equal representation, something to that effect. The current makeup of 52 members is neither fair nor representative of the population. And playing in an open field of politics to get elected is one thing. Moving through the ranks of the political party system to get nominated is another, as I've recently found out. So if we are to be true to our constitution and be truly representative, truly fair, the only way is that we women are given a leg up. Vanuatu is a young country, celebrating only its 42nd year of independence this year. And in those 42 years, technology, norms, education, globalization, acceptance, so the time it took for countries like Australia to get to where they are today, it took maybe 42 years for Vanuatu to rush it. And so it's only fair to give women in recent independent countries, especially in the Pacific, a real leg up, because we well and truly have started on the back foot. It's not even a foot, it's a whole generation. I would never have thought that one day I might advocate for temporary special measures. To be honest, I haven't fully immersed myself in the literature enough to maybe back up all of the reasons why, but I know enough and I've lived enough to see the only way through this strong, entrenched, stigmatized way of politics that we currently live in here in Vanuatu is temporary special measures. I understand that in other countries, in countries where I work in Fiji and Tonga, there are other factors, there are many other factors. In Tonga, for instance, the legislature is made up of a combination of elected members, appointed members, and nobilities. There is not a strong party system, and what determines votes is more about your position in society or your reputation. In Fiji, the electoral system is quite different, with a multi-member open list system that doesn't have multiple constituencies. That's my limited understanding of that system. So political systems, different country contexts, perceptions of women, they all contribute to help. In Guam, for instance, the governor is a woman for the first time, and 40% of that elected legislature is women. But if in the absence of all of these other factors, in Vanuatu, this is our leg up. And temporary special measures, or TSMs, isn't just quotas in parliament. They may be quotas in fielded candidates. They may be restrictions in the qualifications for contesting. They may be quotas in political party reps, what have you. But we need a leg up. Just as the colonial powers gave our foreparents a leg up, now women need a leg up. So you might ask, how does locally led leadership factor into this? I believe an initiative like the Balance of Power is at the cusp of change. I believe we would not have the knowledge, the understanding, the analysis, or even access to the content that we would have if it wasn't being led by women who actually live it, we breathe it, and most of all are accepted as the messengers to advocate that change. It's because of this that we were able to forge a working relationship with some of the most influential agencies in government to begin looking at how we can influence a major change in policy to affect the outcome we hope to achieve. Because of the sensitivity of this work, however, I can't say more, but I hope that I've made it clear as to why we were able to do this with others, perhaps even where others have been perhaps less successful, in the context that I work in, it's not possible to achieve any sustainable, meaningful success without the leadership of an Indigenous man or woman place, person from the place. I can't see how we could aspire to drive real change and real development without having some form of intrinsic, lived, naturalized, even Indigenous knowledge leading it. The role of a development program or an aid-funded program gives us a buffer from the bureaucracies and restrictions of a public servant. It allows us to be flexible. It allows us to be adaptive and innovative in what we do. But as locals, for lack of a better term, we're also a part of this change, this development. The policy that we are trying to influence with the support of development assistance is ours. It will affect our lives and our children's lives. And so how better to drive policy changes than for it to be driven by those who will benefit from it? I might just draw it to a close here. I hope I have not thoroughly confused you this evening. But to conclude, the policy for improved development and growth is to see fairer representation in decision-making, ultimately more women in Parliament, and the best way to drive that from the approach of aid or development assistance is for it to be driven by those who it is for. Thank you. Questions?
Thank you very much, Jennifer. That's fabulous. Really, really interesting. And I've got no doubt there'll be lots of questions. So I might open it up. I'm seeing lots of clapping happening. That sounds good. So who would like to ask a question? You can pop them in the chat box if you don't want to put your hand up, but equally, please just take yourself off mute and dive in.
I can kick us off with a question.
Great, thank you, Danny.
Jennifer, that was so insightful to listen to, and I've just started working in the public service as a recent grad from UNSW. So, and previously I was working at Opportunity International Australia as a junior program officer. So I've been in the development space, and then I've moved to Canberra into the public service, and already about a month in, I'm starting to realize a couple of things about the differences in being in those two industries. It's quite different. And so I guess my question to you is, having had that both of those perspectives, coming from the DFAT and the Australian aid side of things, working with like a bigger department with larger goals and more funding and so forth, as opposed to being, as you say, on the field right there locally, how have those two different perspectives and the many multi-perspectives that I guess you're dealing with helped you in your line of work, and how you see further kind of change or momentum in that space? So yeah, just curious to hear those very two perspectives that you were approaching similar work with.
Yeah. Thanks, Danny. And Canberra is a lovely place. Don't let the place put you off. It's a lovely place. It's difficult. So I would start by saying, when I started working for DFAT, when I started working for AusAid, where it eventually became DFAT, I was what you call a locally engaged staff. So I wasn't a DFAT public servant. I was employed as an In Vanuatu living here in Vanuatu, and already the dynamics between the locally engaged staff and the posted officers that came from Canberra, the diplomats that came from Canberra, there was already a divide in the way that we thought about things and the way that we did things. But after almost 12 years of what I could probably best describe as an identity crisis, where I am an In Vanuatu living in Vanuatu, working in Vanuatu for a foreign government, furthering that foreign government's interests, aligning it every day with what Vanuatu's development objectives are every day. I think I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't gone through that experience, because it gave me such an open, worldly view of why we are doing what we're doing. We had to learn Australia's, I can't remember what the latest iteration of it is called, but there was the white paper and there was oh, my brain is drawing a blank at the moment. But all of these overarching foreign policy statements that the government makes, and we filter that down to where does it align with Vanuatu, where does it align with Vanuatu, and eventually design development programs to fit both countries' objectives. And that meant that every day we had to juggle between being an Australian funded employee or a locally engaged staff of the Australian government and being an In Vanuatu and working inside government and working to influence that change, but representing Australia, but caring about Vanuatu all at the same time. And there was a difference with our diplomatic posted staff because they were, and no offense to all the previously diplomatic staff here tonight, but it seemed like they came objectives, some of them came with, truly wanted to make a difference. But I think all of those experiences and then leaving DFAT, leaving the Australian government and then working for a development program that is funded by them gives you that other perspective on how things work and why they work the way that they do. And I think, all I would tell you, Danny, is time and experience will eventually, and maturity and growing up and realizing that you found your own identity inside of all of this chaos and trying to fit yourself into this box and this box and this box, and then finally just realizing, what is it that I care about? What am I interested in? And that's what I'm about, and that's what I'm going to be. And then all of it works for your favor because you can pull from all of the different experiences that you've had and make it make sense for you. Because if you're so busy trying to fit into this particular mold or this particular mold or this particular mold, you'll get lost. And if it's not who you are, I don't know if I'm rambling, if I've answered your question.
No, I totally get you. Your spirit will die. Like you'll get so, I guess, carried away towards one thing, and then you might lose hope in the industry or lose a sense of how you fit in that space. But yeah, I totally agree with, I guess, what you've said about with time and with maturity, and because I guess very early stages for me personally, but to have all of those thoughts kind of amalgamating in my brain as I fit into this new mold of being in Canberra. And I think it helps to definitely vocalize your thoughts with people that can, I guess, share their experience and share their views. So thanks very much for touching on that. Appreciate it.
That's great. Another question. Somebody going to put their hand up. Well, while we're waiting and you're thinking, can I just ask everyone to just put your cameras on so that I can take a picture that we can use for our website, so we can actually see real people. That would be great. Lovely. Okay. Good to see you all. Oh, now I've just got to press the right button to get this. Okay, keep smiling, keep waving. That's good. Okay, let's have that one. Thank you very much. All right, another question. Who has got one next? Hi, Joe.
Hi. Good to see you, Chris. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Jen, for a really insightful talk tonight. I just wanted to ask you a question about something you said about TSMs, and you said you never thought you'd be someone who supported temporary special measures, but you certainly sound like someone who supports temporary special measures. So I'm just interested in your journey in that realization and what's got you there.
So late last year, I had been approached by, so we have general elections in Vanuatu 2024, so 2 years from now. And I was approached by a political party here to gauge my interest to see whether I wanted to contest, whether I wanted to be a candidate for 2024 elections. And so I thought, you know, it was something that had been on my mind for a long time. And I thought I would, you know, like it's 2022, there's still 2 years away. I've still got a lot of time to think about this. And I thought, yeah, hi, Sonia, yes. And I thought, you know, if I say yes now, I still have, you know, just under 24 months to prepare and to think about this. But if I say now, if I say yes now, it's January, you know, I don't have to think about this until June or July and really start to make a commitment. But then very quickly, you know, and part of it was being naive about how straightforward this might work. Very quickly, I got thrown into a whole bunch of different spaces where I was meeting with a whole bunch of different people who, a lot of them were, you know, on the shadier side. And, you know, and very quickly I was being asked to, you know, can you hire us a vehicle? We need to do this. We need to go here. You know, how much money do you have? Can you fund this? Can you? And I just thought, whoa, all I said was yes. I haven't actually, you know, and there's a process to go through. And so this particular political party has subcommittees that are set up in different areas of one constituency. And so you have to be vetted and you have to actually go through that process, go through these different layers, these different governance structures. But before you even do that, you've got to be able to demonstrate you have at least 100 voters. So you've got 100 people that you can show on a list. And if you can produce ID cards, you know, people go around collecting IDs, photocopying them and putting them on this spreadsheet and giving it to this committee where you can demonstrate that there are actually people behind you. And then you have to demonstrate you've got a certain amount of money. And then you go through this process. So you write a letter and then it goes through the next step and the next step. So I hadn't even done any of this. I knew it was there, but I hadn't really thought about it. But before I'd done any of that, I was being called because word had obviously gotten around. So I was being called to go and meet at, you know, this nakamal in an evening, you know, with a group of people that I didn't know. And I was by myself and I didn't go with anybody who I knew or trusted. And then I watched as all of these people just played this game of, you know, backstabbing and, you know, and I hadn't even gone through the formal process yet. This was just all of the wheeling and dealing that was happening around it. And I realized that, oh my gosh, I don't have any of the groundwork. And if I want to do the groundwork, this takes 8 years to lead up to it, at least. Because you have to start doing things. You've got to show that you're there. You've got to attend party congresses. You've got to, you know, drop cash at fundraisings. You've got to, you know, hang around where the Prime Minister is at an event and put yourself, you know, I just thought, wow, none of that is me at all. Oh, so, and so I thought, I tested a theory. I tested the political party system. And in our work, as you would know, Joe and Anna and others here tonight, there are so many mechanisms, Sonia, so many mechanisms to use into getting, and so many strategies that we implement to try to get to one higher objective. So there are many, many ways that you can go. One of them was through a political party system. And I chose one particular political party, which is the biggest, most bureaucratic, red taped one of them all, to test that. And I realized I hadn't even gotten the first foot in the door. I'm never going to get to the end. And if I wanted to do this, like I know now there is a lady that is contesting in the 2024 elections who has been working for the party for 25 years. And it's taken her 25 years to get her name to the top of the list. And this is this political party. That's not all of them. Other ones function slightly differently, but there's the same number of layers and steps and all of these things that you've just got to. I came home after the first week and I was getting phone calls, while I was trying to help my children with their homework, while I was making dinner. My husband was starting to get, upset. Like, who are these people? Why are they calling me now? Why are you leaving the house right now? And I thought, no, this is not what I signed up for. Like, I don't want to do this. So I wanted to do it the way it's done in the textbook, which is obviously not how it's done in reality. But, it made me think, we don't stand a chance. Right? Not here, not the way we do it here in Vanuatu. If I was to affiliate with a different political party, and I have been approached by other political parties who have told me, you don't have to do all of that. You could just do it this way. But it's not as easy as just, all right, I'll just jump on board with you guys because it seems easier. I think the deeper, more entrenched kind of barrier is this system that's been set up by all of these big man, Melanesian men who think this is the way it's done in the village, right? So they've just taken that and plonked it on a Western political system and just made it the Vanuatu way. So yeah, Joe, I think temporary special measures might be the way to go. Emphasis on temporary, special, and measures. I'm not saying let's demand 50% of seats in Parliament. No, absolutely not. I mean, let's put in some temporary measures that might allow women that opportunity to demonstrate their capability enough so that they don't need them anymore and can run on their own on at least an equitable playing field.
And just a follow-up question to that, Jen, which sort of relates to Dee's question earlier. You've given a really vivid picture of the rules of the game in politics and how it all works. Does the same thing apply in the public service and in the bureaucracy, or how is it different?
No, less. Honestly, to a lesser degree, because the public service is governed by the Public Service Act. And I think because, to use a term that young people use now, because people are more woke, because there are more people demanding transparency, demanding that, things are done the way that they should be done, because we have now in the workforce here in Vanuatu a bulge of young people who have graduated from university are back and are fighting for jobs. And so the demand for there to be a stringent merit-based, selection process of recruiting people is much stronger, where that may not have been the case before, and it was much easier to hand off jobs. To say, writing your levels, work up the ranks, that all works fine up until middle management, senior management. Once you get to like director level and DG, no, it's all politics again. You still go through a merit-based system. Anybody can still apply. You still get shortlisted and interviewed, all of that. But the final selection still, there's still a lot of politics that's played at that level. Yeah.
Great. Sounds absolutely fascinating. Another question for Jennifer.
Yeah, I have a question. And apologies, I was a bit late to the party this evening. But yeah, my question sort of picks up on some of the things that Danny has been talking about. And Yeah, and I think what you said there before in terms of, the public service can crush your soul sometimes or crush your spirit. And I laugh because I was like, yeah, I can definitely see that as someone who's new to the public service. But yeah, I guess what I'm kind of wondering, do you, Jen, have any advice for someone, say, going into DFAT who, genuinely wants to make a really positive impact, but obviously has to work within the systems that are there, and to, avoid, I guess, just falling into all of those traps where you just get caught up by tape and you're not actually able to do the things that you really kind of, I guess, got into this work to do. So yeah, just wondering if you have any advice.
So I guess if you're working for DFAT right now.
I'll be starting shortly there, yeah.
Okay. All right. So I think is what I understand of the way DFAT works is that you have to do your time in Canberra. And so they'll, wherever you end up in Canberra, you'll probably have to do that for at least 2 or 3 years before you can apply for a posting. The advice I would give you about going on a posting is, first of all, the posting cycle is 3 years. And so one of the things that will help you is that the people who are locally engaged staff who work for the high commissions in whatever country you're going to have been there for probably 5 to 10 years. So they've been there through the longevity of a particular program. So the cycle that they live with is that diplomat cycle, which is 3 years. So every 3 years, they get into the cycle where a new person comes in, they familiarize them with the program, they take them up to, say, maybe the middle of the second year, they're in full control, and then towards the end of the third year, they're leaving their posting. And so that cycle is what you're going to go into. And so my advice to you would be, 1, do your time in Canberra. Absorb as much of it as possible to understand the organization, because it is huge and there are so many parts of it and you can go down a rabbit hole. But try and get as much experience across the different departments as much as possible. If you're being moved from one to another, take the opportunity. Put your hand up for short-term postings if they come up, because that is trial by fire. You will be thrown into situations that you're probably not ready for, but it will open your eyes. You'll get a first look at what it's like. No posting is an easy posting. I think sometimes some posts are made out to be like, oh, this is going to be cruisy. You're just going to go and sit there under a coconut tree, and it's not like that at all. Do your time in Canberra, get as much experience as possible, put your hand up for a posting. When you go, recognize that the people that you're going to work with know their stuff. They've been there a long time. They've worked on it for years. They know the ins and outs of it, and you are the newbie. So a little bit of humility goes a long way. Listen to your local staff, take your cue from them until you're confident enough to make decisions on your own. At least give them the space, because you will win more of their respect if you listen to them first, and then it will be smooth sailing for the rest of it. I think so. Others in the room might disagree who have been on posting before. But I hope that helps.
Thank you. That's useful. And I guess what I was sort of wondering as well is, I totally agree. Like, I'm, in Canberra currently at a different department, and, I'm eager to spend some time here too, like I said, absorb the department, get to learn, the ways a little bit. Do you have any, sort of advice, I guess, being in Canberra? Obviously, in many ways, you're a bit more removed than a lot of the action, I suppose. For how to really, be effective and kind of get stuff done in a really, and like you say, like, have your humility and kind of get to bring in those core essence of why you're doing the work, but from Canberra. I think that's what I'm sort of thinking is, being here in Canberra, in the Canberra office, it's such a, you know, one side of it and how to bring in that kind of effectiveness and humility and everything while you're here, I guess is, yeah, another part of that question that I sort of have.
I guess, so in my experience, and this was a while ago now, and things being DFAT, things would have changed a lot already since I left. But what I found from my experience from this side, from the post side of things, was I made connections and I made, I guess, friends with people in different departments. So people in, I don't know what they're called now, but the procurement area, the people who looked after procurements and the finance team and desk. And so if you can, and you get to sit on a desk, on a country desk or European desk or UN desk or whatever it might be, build a rapport, like build a relationship with who you're dealing with every day. Like, and I guess it depends on on your personality as well. But I find that if we can strip through the work stuff that we have to deal with every day and just talk to each other like people, you start to build a person-to-person, that person-to-person relationship that DFAT talks about in their diplomatic, in their diplomacy things is kind of, like that works inside the workspace as well. And so if you're able to have one-on-one contact with people that are in the posts, I think that goes a long way to making you appreciate really what it is they deal with. Because when you're in Canberra, you know all of the rules and all of the guidelines, all of the things that you have to work around, all of that just sounds like a whole bunch of hard work that I have to do here, because I want to get on with doing the thing that's really cool and the actual work, but I've got to do all of this other stuff. And then I know it's not even called APPR anymore. What is it now? IMR, yeah. So, there's like every day from this end, every day there'll be a demand that's either coming from desk or it's coming from, wherever. I don't even remember the names anymore. I'm very sorry, but that's what it feels like on this side. And it feels like that's the burden. Stop harassing me on email. I need to go out and do my job. So the best way to not to come across as one of those people that's like, oh, look, I need you to answer section 23 of blah, blah, blah. Build a rapport, build a relationship, a one-on-one personal relationship with whoever you're talking to every day. And then all of that doesn't feel too much like work, I've found in the past. It also makes the transition into a posting career a lot easier. I don't know if that helps. I wonder if other people who've had similar experiences want to share.
I'll add one thing that I've heard from others who've taken a posting of that type, and that is, I think your point, Jennifer, to treat people with respect and to go in with some humility is really important. But also, if you're going to a country with a different language, that you learn some of the local language before you go, at least be able to say please and thank you, and a greeting at the very minimum, because that also shows respect in country. And that's something I hear on a regular basis. Sonia, you have a point to add?
Mute, Sonia, mute.
Sorry, can I ask a question instead of adding to that thread? Yes, I can, because this is a public forum. Hello, Jen. Thank you for your Jen, I'm interested in just on the theme of tonight's discussion, which is around working with people in the public service. You did an amazing activity, I think in 2020, which was to showcase women in leadership in the public service in Vanuatu, and you showcased 40 individual women, and you did an amazing exhibition at which people came and were able to marvel at the achievements of those women in person. I'm wondering whether, you know, almost a year and a half down the track now, those women have come to you and said what that experience has meant to them with the benefit a bit of distance. Have they reflected on what that meant in their families or what that meant even in their department? Has it had any kind of impact that they've come back to you about?
Thanks, Sonia. I wish I could have given you a better answer, because we would have had a retreat in December last year that had brought together all of those women again to do exactly that, to have a reflections workshop and to understand the impacts of what that exhibition did. But it didn't end at just the exhibition. So we then created a book, Nation Builders, is what it's called. And this book was then distributed to, you know, schools, to libraries, to, you know, not as widely distributed as what we would have liked, but so those portraits in that particular exhibition Sonia is talking about, we put them all into books and did a whole story about who these women are and what they've achieved and the positions that they hold. And not all of them I've had the pleasure of having one-on-one discussions with, but those that I have had, you know, it's amazing how one event that you orchestrate to put on a platform that's going to get national attention, where the Prime Minister is going to come and launch, will elevate a person's level of confidence and their ability to take pride in their work, and just the recognition they got from their staff from being a part of that exhibition. And one in particular, who is the Commissioner of Labour, who does a lot of work with the Pacific Labour Mobility and the Seasonal Workers Program. You know, she just went from strength to strength, and a lot of that wasn't like the exhibition was this end product that we did, but we spent a lot of time with her, talking to her, and she would come back and just have chats with Wilson. Wilson is a colleague of mine who looks after the Vanuatu program here where I work, and just, you know, bounce ideas off, like, what do you think about this particular thing? And, you know, it was nice to see, but, you know, and unfortunately we had designed this really, really cool retreat for these women to come together, because we wanted to wait a year and a half after the event to see, you know, did it have an impact? Have the books had an impact on them, on their families and all of that? And unfortunately, we weren't able to do that. But the good news is, because we are in COVID lockdown, the Public Service Commission has reinstated all of the directors back into their jobs, because their contracts all finished. And so all of those women left. They're all back in the job now. And so, COVID willing, this year we'll be able to have a reflection session with all of those women, and I will have something for you, Sonia.
That sounds great. What a great initiative. It sounds fascinating. Another question. I might ask one, if I can sneak one in as others are thinking. You said you've worked in the public sector and you're looking at being elected, and I can only say it would be great for Vanuatu if you were. But I'm just wondering, do you think that there's benefit from working in the public sector that would help if, as a politician, in understanding the whole way things work from the inside?
Yes and no. If you had asked me this question a couple of weeks ago, I would have probably just said yes. But in recent times, I think we have seen how former senior public servants who have made the transition into politics have used their knowledge and their influence from their time as public servants to manipulate and maneuver through the system that they used to be the head bureaucrat in. And I don't think that that's any different from any country. But definitely, I think one of I think what we often find here in countries in the Pacific is there's two sides to a political career. So there is the side that I think appeals the most to me, and that is the legislation and the governing of a country and making right policy decisions for development and taking care of the welfare of our people. The other side of that is keeping your voters happy so you keep getting reelected. And there are people whose interest is purely on the community side of helping their communities, doing smaller scale rural development in their constituencies, that type of work. And then there are those people who do that. Caleb, excuse my son, sorry. Shut the door. Sorry about
that. That's nice to meet him. Very nice.
Sorry. And then there are those people who have a greater focus on the legislating and dedicate resources to managing all of their constituents. And I think here, where you see the most effective people are elected, a lot of people are elected because of the constituents' work rather than because of the legislating. Public servants who transition into politics do better at the legislating than the constituents, keeping the constituents happy. Unfortunately, the majority of people who get elected are those people who keep constituents happy, and those people are less interested in making legislation or governing. They just want to keep getting elected to keep being members of parliament, to get the perks, and if they're lucky, they become a minister and they use that to travel and do all kinds of stuff. But I think a big part of politics here in Vanuatu is just about the money politics and the power politics rather than the governing and the legislation. And you can, we're not any different from many countries in the Pacific.
Not any different to Australia today.
No.
I have to say. Okay. Another question. I think we might have come to the end of them, which is where you can draw breath, Jennifer. Look, thank you. That's absolutely fascinating story. I've just got one other question, actually. Can you tell us what's the thing that helped you most in your career to get to where you are today? Was there a person? Was there a piece of education? Was there a particular role?
Okay. So probably the place that had the biggest impact on molding my professional career and influencing the direction that I eventually took would be the first 6 years that I was in ACFID. So when I left uni many years ago, I came back and I thought I'm going to go and get a degree in politics and international relations, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to work for foreign affairs because that's what I wanted to do. that never happens the way that you think it will. And you know, I had to decide to take what was available and get some experience under my belt. So I went back to my former high school and I taught there for a couple of years. I taught history and geography and social science. And then I got the opportunity to go into the public service, but I went into a department that I didn't have a background in and I wasn't very interested in, but I took the job because it was my foot in the door to the public service. But then after a while, the opportunity came up for me to go back to school. And so I went back to Canberra. I went to Canberra for a couple of years to get a master's, came back, and the opportunity came up in AusAid. And I thought, I did want to work for foreign affairs. I didn't think I wanted to work for this government's foreign affairs. I wanted to, but it was development, and development as an industry wasn't something that was on my radar. I wanted to work for the public service. I wanted to work in government, but it didn't occur to me that the two were synonymous. And I had to learn about the aid industry and the development industry. And I learned that in AusAid, and it made me, AusAid at the time was not like what DFAT is today. It was a separate agency. And so the way it did development was a little bit more different. And we were at that, I was in a program that was kind of at that cutting edge of that thinking and working politically, doing development differently, all of that. That work. And so that first 6 years gave me a crash course into what the possibilities could be. And then the next 5 years in DFAT showed me what diplomacy looks like and how you do development with diplomacy, and a different part of it. But it gave me enough to realize that actually this is the thing that I was most passionate about. I wasn't going to get from just being here in DFAT. Then to get into this job was, again, not on my radar at all. And I think the program can often be referred to as it looks like a gender program. It looks like, oh, it's women in leadership, it's a gender program. Well, we don't really identify as a gender program. And I think for the longest time, I did not want anyone to call me a feminist because I wasn't about that. And I didn't want to have a label. I just wanted to do development. And at the end of the day, I just want more women to be in Parliament. That's all. I'm not a feminist. I'm not a gender expert. I'm not any of that. And so it was an opportunity to use all of those skills. And when I was working for DFAT and AusAid, I was working for an economic growth program. So we didn't touch gender at all. Until we had to mainstream it in our APPRs, and so we had to write a little bit about what we did. But it wasn't something that I thought of every day, like even though it was something that bothered me and I wanted to see more women in Parliament, it was just this thing that I lived with at the back. It wasn't my job. My job was over here. I was doing this. And then when I started working for the Balance of Power initiative, it all came together. And Danny, this comes back to your initial question, like you don't know where that path is leading you. You just have to trust the process and keep going. And eventually you'll land at that one day you're like, this is it right here. This is where I want it to be. But this is not the end. This is where I want to be now. But I can already see where I want to go. So I don't know if that's answered your question, Chris, but I think the point I want to make is maybe don't always think that one path is the only path. Like just because in your mind you planned it to be that way and you're going to do this first, then this, and then this, and then this, it never ever works out that way. And it's the door that you didn't think was the right door that's going to open into the biggest opportunities of your life. So
is absolutely fantastic. And I'm just desperately grabbing that quote, which I think is a brilliant quote, because the path is never a straight one from A to Z where you plan to go to. There's a lot of different opportunities that come up on the way, and you can end up somewhere quite different. Yeah, Cass, you wanted to make a comment?
I just have a question around if you were elected into politics, Jen, what changes would you like to make or see in Vanuatu? What would be at the top of your...
I think we don't have a strong enough... I think we don't have a strong enough mechanism to hold our elected officials accountable. It's just... There's just too many ways people break the rules. Before even trying to fix, roads or schools or healthcare, all of that, I would fix our leadership first. Because for example, the COVID outbreak, we have managed to contain any COVID cases in quarantine facilities for 2 years. And it took one politician to go into the quarantine site because he just told the, do you know who I am? Do you know what I could do to you if you don't let me in? Walked in, got people inside the quarantine who were sick, brought them out, took them to a cover bar, had cover, drove them back. He got sick, they were still sick. He went and then mingled with 120 people, is what the latest contact tracing is. So right now, there is a big debate about how do we hold them accountable for what they've done? Because they broke a law. There isn't a strong enough mechanism to hold our leaders accountable for the many loopholes that they go through and for all of the corruption that happens. Because if you can fix that, then you can fix service delivery, you can fix, money will start to go to the right place, then you can have better roads and you can have better health centers and you can resource everything a lot better. But all of this money is leaking through the gaps because we just have bad quality leaders and they're all men.
That's one that we see in many places, Jennifer, and all power to you to actually address that. We will be here cheering you on. So we definitely want to hear about you. So yes, let me thank you. We really appreciate your time. Absolutely fascinating to hear your story and for you to bring to us a bit of an insight, because it's really important as practitioners here, we work with people who are locally based, and we really need to have those two pictures. So we will be saying thank you in our usual way, which is to send you a fabulous Women in Aid and Development mug, which only goes to our speakers, very highly priced, I can assure you. And I have no doubt that everybody's got a lot out of it. We have recorded the session and we will be converting it, putting up on our website in the coming weeks. So if you missed a bit of it, you can always go back for a little bit more. Our next event is, fingers crossed, going to be a face-to-face event again. And we're going to be talking about working in conflict zones. If anyone has suggestions for speakers on that topic in Sydney, Melbourne or Canberra, because we run our sessions everywhere, then do please let me know. We have our mentoring program that is underway now for this half of the year. If you are interested, the next round will be starting in July. And of course, we always recommend people become members and support us, $50 a year. Not a huge amount of money and tax deductible, I'm sure. And we will be offering some more opportunities through the year in terms of workshops. Wishing you well in lockdown, Jennifer. It's a place we've all been for varying lengths of time. It's not comfortable, and we know that the most worrying part is family and friends and making sure that they remain safe. So we wish you absolute well and Godspeed.
Thank you. Thank you,
very
everyone.
much.
Thank you
I'll
very
close
much.
it up now. Thank you, and I'll be in touch.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.